My family is a true Grapes of Wrath story. This is in the face of my dad telling me my entire life, whatever you do not start a wine brand. And he goes, don't do it, because if you try and sell through grocery stores, you're competing with Gallo and Constellation and these huge wine conglomerates that own the shelf space. You'll never be able to compete with them on price. You'll never get the shelf space. Don't even try it. And by the time the election was there, I was doing over $20,000 of sales a day.
Hello, and welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. We are Kurt and Kristen Luidhardt, your hosts and co-founders of the Prosper Group, an agency that's raised over $500 million and helped elect over 100 members of Congress, 14 governors, 15 U.S. senators, and 1 president. And now we're helping your business get elected by answering the question, what if you could exponentially grow your business by tapping into a unique and engaged audience that we call Liberty Spenders? Liberty Spenders are politically conservative or faith-based consumers, and they're looking to buy from businesses and brands that align with their values.
Our guest today is Paul Johnson, owner of the Republican Red Winery. Paul is a second-generation vintner with a passion for fine wine and preserving the freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution. He established Republican Red leading into the 2020 election to give the silent majority a bold and graceful way to signal their values and invite lively discussion. The company's mission is to bring Republicans together, one glass and one conversation at a time. Paul, we're happy to have you on.
Thank you so much. Very nice introduction. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I know you come from a family history of wine. When we talked first, you mentioned that you guys used to own vineyards. How did everything evolve today into Republican Red?
Oh man, how much time do we have? This story actually goes back to Pauls Valley, Oklahoma, and my family is a true Grapes of Wrath story. My grandfather was there was 16 births, 11 of which survived, and he was the oldest responsible male in his family. And he had an older brother that kind of, wasn't really into taking care of everyone. But anyway, his father, this was during the Depression and kind of the Dust Bowl, Oklahoma. And anyway, his father had kind of taken off after 16 births, believe that. And then his mother passed away. So it's a true Grapes of Wrath story, moving from, right after the Depression. Moving from Oklahoma to the Salinas Valley is quite literally the Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck story. And that's how my family moved to the Salinas Valley, which is in Monterey County. So if you're familiar with Carmel, Monterey, that's where we are. It's a beautiful place. And so he came here and got a job as a ranch foreman and worked his tail off and was able to send my dad to Fresno State, at which point he learned and studied viticulture and learned how to grow wine grapes. And this was in the early 70s. The industry hadn't really taken off in California yet. And he convinced the landowner that my grandfather was the foreman for to partner on what was considered kind of poor farmland up on the hillside to plant a vineyard. And this was the area which is now known as the Santa Lucia Highlands, which is a world recognized growing region for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And so my dad planted the very first vineyard up on that bench, which is called the Santa Lucia Highlands. And so I grew up in the industry. I grew up moving pipe on the vineyard, and, we had cattle on the vineyard, and, I've grown up in it. And so after years of farming our vineyards, we ended up actually leasing out our land to like a big wine company. And my dad goes, whatever you do, and this is in the face of my dad telling me my entire life, whatever you do not start a wine brand. Because he did it. He started a brand called Lockwood that was a nationally distributed wine brand. And he goes, don't do it, because if you try and sell through grocery stores, you're competing with Gallo and Constellation and these huge wine conglomerates that own the shelf space. You'll never be able to compete with them on price. You'll never get the shelf space. Don't even try it. And if you try and do kind of the tasting room model where everyone comes to you and you stay small and boutique, then you're limited in size by how many people are walking by. And, that's also a major struggle. But the opportunity that I see and that I've seized on is, we can kind of take it for granted, but e-commerce is a fairly new frontier, and especially in the wine industry. And so I decided, instead of building a wine brand, and if you think about most wineries you come across, they are all about themselves. It's all about the place at the winery. This is a Napa vineyard. It's very much focused on the place where the grapes are grown and the pedigree of the winemaker, let's say. To me, that in the vast, vast, vast majority of wineries are all like that. So I thought to myself, well, what's the point of building something and doing something aligned just like everyone else? I'm going to make this a purpose-driven brand. And I'm going to find people that have a common passion, and then I'm going to build a brand around that. And so what do? You look inside yourself and go, well, where are my passions? What would I want to see? And I actually first came up with the Republican Red idea in 2016 during Trump's first victory. But I didn't have the bandwidth at the time to get it off and going. But fast forward 4 years, 2020, I had this perfect opportunity. We had leased out the vineyards. I had just started actually earning an MBA at Santa Clara University. And I thought, you know what, this is the time to do this. And I thought this was going to be a little side hustle while I was in school. I was just going to kind of get this little website going, send out a few orders, and, learn. And so I launched in the middle of August of 2020, which is about 12 weeks before the election. And by the time the election was there, I was doing over $20,000 of sales a day, and packing and shipping, 200 to 250 boxes of wine out of my house every day.
Wow.
And it went, I don't know how I did it. Every day I would take my living room and push the furniture around and set up it was nuts. So the day of the election, I'm thinking, all right, well, this is taking off. This is great. The day of the election, Facebook, Twitter, Google, just shut off my ability to advertise. And that was that's how I, found customers, obviously. And so I went from doing unbelievable business to it just stopped.
Yeah.
And, in retrospect, there's a lot of different ways we could talk about that. But at the end of the day, it allowed me to focus on school and finish that. And now I'm back after reevaluating my business plan, taking what I learned through the experience, taking what I learned at school, and build this business.
Well, it's fascinating, Paul. And we were going to get into this question because we know from your story that this happened to you. But Kurt, you may have had a reaction.
No, we see this all the time right now with these platforms. Is either the algorithms or the San Francisco-based employees who don't agree with us shut these good sort of conservative brands down, or they shadow ban them, and it's impossible to get it fixed. There was a time when I could get a Facebook rep on the phone, and now it goes through some sort of, I'm sure, AI-generated process to work its way up, and it can really hurt brands like what you're talking about. And perhaps it ends up being a blessing in disguise, as you said, but it's sad to see a good, aspiring entrepreneur held back by, platform algorithms.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're often given no explanation. Were you given anything to go by to help you understand or to mitigate?
Well, yeah, what they said is, and it's true. They turned off, if you were considered a political organization of any kind, they turned off your ability to advertise. And so I wasn't the only one, but you're right. These companies, they have their own agenda. There's no question about it. And they have so much power over what is said over speech, right? And they're deciding what free speech is and what it means. And it's flat out wrong. And people know it. I mean, the fact that they disabled President Trump's accounts, I mean, they completely silenced him. And we know that Zuckerberg put millions and millions of dollars into Georgia and, these kind of critical states for the last election. And if he's doing that, of course, his platform is going to be biased. Of course, they're going to set the rules up in such a way that, help the progressive liberal agenda and hurt the conservative agenda. I mean, of course it does.
I was just going to say, it's such an interesting discussion because they have grown to be so powerful. And so it impacts so much. And yet at the same time, as business owners, we also have that perspective of, okay, their platform, their rules, their policies. And so it's why what you're saying is so important for business owners to hear, which is we have to be cognizant of that and make sure that we are protecting our brand and making sure that we're protected against cancel culture, that we own our customers, and that we're taking steps so that we can be the masters of our destiny and not have so much in the hands of other people who, especially we know, aren't necessarily motivated to be on our side all the time.
Absolutely. And thankfully, there are plenty of other places to go. And thankfully, Elon Musk has emerged as a fighter for free speech. And overnight, Twitter all of a sudden became a place where they weren't policing in the same way. They weren't kicking anybody out who disagreed with the government's position on vaccination or didn't support the left-wing agenda. I think ultimately that kind of censorship is probably what drove Elon Musk so much to get involved in Twitter, now X.
It did. And what's great is, Elon has also made it very clear that he's not going to censor that on the other side. And so even on the heels of the RNC convention and pushback of or his assassination attempt and calls for Elon to censor what people felt like was misinformation on the other side, he came out very strong and said, no, we support free speech, and that's how we're going to be no matter what your policy or position. And that's amazing. And it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. Well, it's cliche, I suppose, but freedom isn't free. If you want free speech, you're going to have to be willing to allow someone to speak who you don't like their message. But if you really want free speech, you're going to have to allow it. And that's the price of free speech is maybe there are people that you really don't believe in them. You think it's, it can be painful to hear. It can be violent to hear. It can, but whenever you draw a line on what can and can't be said, you are limiting the ability for people to speak. And then that line starts to get drawn in and in and in, for the sake of public safety or for the sake of decency. And the cost of doing that is freedom. And, as long as people are, it's not to say that there aren't lines that should be drawn somewhere.
Sure.
But as a society, that should be an open discussion in something that isn't taken lightly.
Absolutely, because to your point, the slippery slope is dangerous. It starts with some, certain types of content. Then before you know it, you're not allowed to confront the government narrative on whatever their policy of the day is. So,
right.
But now I'm sure, about to enter a new era of excitement behind Republican Red. But I have talked to a few people over the years who've gotten into the alcohol and wine business. And I had one person I was talking to say it feels like it's run by the mob. It's highly regulated. There's all sorts of like people you need to know. It's a tough space to be in. Has that been your experience? I mean, you grew up in it, maybe you know all the secrets, but what's the industry like?
Yeah, the industry, again, when you get into the national distribution game, then like any other business, the largest companies tend to control, through cost and through influence, they really protect their positions. And it's kind of a natural, it would be a natural part of any business. I wouldn't say that it's some mob run thing or something like that. It's just, if you have, a stake in an industry, you fight to protect it. And the way that the larger companies do it is by, driving down their costs, which they can do because they have economies of scale, and they have more products to move. So they control more of the distributor's attention, right? It's a bigger account. They can make more money easier. So it's just a natural consequence of the industry. With that said, ever since the 21st Amendment repealing prohibition, we've had what's called the 3-tier system of distribution. And what that means is, between the producer of an alcoholic product and the retailer of a product, you must go through an intermediary. You must go through a distributor. So there's 3 tiers to the industry. And I think this is something that can be really looked at and updated, because that system greatly gives a great advantage to your larger companies, because then they control that intermediary. If you were to strip out that requirement to go through a distributor, then all of a sudden your small wineries can have more of a direct access to and build relationships with the retailers and restaurants and, all across. It would kind of level the playing field a little more. So there are some things in the industry that are kind of flawed from a structural, point of view and the way the laws are set up. But no, I wouldn't say that there's, some big bad mob out there running the alcohol industry. I don't agree with that.
Well, it's always interesting to see, because sometimes you get regulations that were established 100 years ago. It made sense at the time, but now they're kind of built into everything that's done, and it prevents new entrants into the market. And I remember, even for ourselves, when we were a little baby marketing agency, we were trying to do websites for members of Congress through the U.S. House. And there was this approval process that was a nightmare. It took months to get approved to have the ability to make a website on ushouse.gov. And I hated it. It finally took a call from a member of Congress to get us approved to do it. But once we were behind that firewall, that same thing that prevented competition now became our ally, because it made it hard for new competitors to come in. And soon after we got approved, they reformed the process and made it a lot easier. I thought, well, that's too bad.
I know. There was a part of me that was like, I was equally happy. And then like, well, wait a minute. I just went through all this to get this done. And so it's interesting being on both sides of that situation.
Absolutely. I also thought it was really cool what you're doing with the Shades of Red campaign. There's a documentary you mentioned on your website, but also just part of your marketing campaign. Talk about your vision for Shades of Red.
Yeah. So the reason I started the brand in the first place was because I was really fed up with how Republicans and conservatives were being portrayed in the media. That was really my driving force behind starting this brand.
Really?
And I felt it was, I knew what they were portraying about, basically we're all a bunch of rage-filled, heartless bigots is basically how they portray Republicans and conservatives. And all the imagery they would, if you turn on the media, that's what you would see. And I thought to myself, man, with the way the country's going and the way that the left is being so successful with this campaign, what can I do? What can I do about this? And so I thought I can do something with this wine brand, because wine is it's a product that's, you have a glass of wine and over a meal, you have a glass of wine and you sit by the fireplace or sit outside on your patio and you talk. It's really a communal product, and it brings connection between people. And so I thought, if I put something on a label, so when you put that bottle of wine on the table, everyone's going to notice what it is and what it says. Everyone looks at the label. And if it signals a bit about who you are and what you believe in, you bet it's going to start a conversation around it. And what better way to bring people together and to kind of break down these stereotypes than to just have one-on-one conversations? And people have shied away from talking about politics. That's why it's the silent majority in a way, because we don't talk about that, because it's just going to lead to some sort of a tense conversation, or that's how friends become not friends. And so, especially, here I am in California.
Right.
So I have lots of opportunity to unfriend people through sharing my beliefs, which is fine with me. But the idea behind the brand is to bring people together through conversation and to counter this left's narrative about who we are. So that's why the brand was started in the first place. As I kind of went to the drawing board after finishing school, after that first round, and I rebuilding the brand, I thought, what can I do with this wine and kind of create something that takes this message that I want to do and really take it out there. And so that's where I came up with, I'm going to start filming a documentary, and I'm going to start going and walking a day in the life of everyday Americans and really get into their genuine, authentic life to find out why they are and vote conservative, Republican. What is it that, because I know some people are in it because they want to limit the size and scope of government. Some people are really passionate about reducing, regulation and tax issues around their business. It's more of a dollars and cents things. Some people, it's the social aspect of why they vote one way or the other. And when you start talking to people, the stories come from different places. Sometimes their entire family have always been conservative. They grew up with it. It's part of who they are. Other people, they're the first one in their family to not vote that way, and yet they do it anyway. Some people spent their whole life voting Democrat, and now something happened, and now they're voting Republican. And so the more we can get into the authentic side of people and why they vote the way they do and why they hold the beliefs that they do, now you're completely breaking down this ridiculous stereotype from the left. And you're bringing humanity, like a human aspect, back into politics, which is where it should be. And so that was the reason behind it. And it kind of started with this, I'm going to go across the country and go into different communities and show how it's different in different places. Being a conservative on the California coast is different than being a conservative in the South than it is in the Northeast. It's the culture is different. And so the conservatism can be different, and that's fine. And it's just a matter of kind of seeing that we're not all just one, we are many shades of red. That's where the name came from. And so we're still looking to go. I've recorded, and what you see on the website is our trailer from just here in my backyard, what we recorded here in Monterey. And as this wine takes off and we gain more funding, I fully plan on going across the country. In the meantime, we have little kind of social media clips that we're looking to do where people go on and just claim their shade of red. Like my shader, a 1-minute clip of explaining why you vote Republican. And that's very powerful because it's authentic. It's who you are. And there's nothing more powerful than being authentic and real.
Well, that's said beautifully, and it sounds like an amazing project. So I'm glad you're doing it, and the passion that you have for it really comes through. And so I wanted to ask Paul, was there any particular politician or influencer who really inspired you to become a Republican or to get this passionate about it?
I'm one of those people that grew up in a conservative family. So these values have always been, we're a farming family. So shouldn't be too much of a surprise that, we're conservative Republican family. But I wasn't always engaged, right? I grew up with the values, but politics were like, too big. It's too far away, right? Even just
at some
California,
point they have
Sacramento.
to become our own, no matter what, right?
Yeah, and as a younger man, it was I'm going to spend my time doing other things that are better for It just wasn't in my face, until really the left's attacks on Trump were just so egregious. It was so blatantly obvious to me that this was just a power grab in an abuse of the media. It was so obvious to me. And I thought, man, if this goes unchecked, we're going to lose our country. It really hit home for me. Kind of watching the attacks on Trump. And that's why I started the winery. But it really, my passion for politics really came out of that time. And even then, even in his first term, some of the things he would do and say would, kind of make you cringe a little, like, oh man, did you have to say that? Oh, did you have to do this? But man, as I've seen this go on, my support for that man as our president is solid, is bulletproof. I mean, seeing how he's taken this onslaught for a decade now, and he's been unwavering. It's inspiring. If you've been watching this and it doesn't make you think about the role of politics and the importance of it, I don't know what will.
Well, it certainly showcases the level of commitment and dedication that he has. And people can have all kinds of theories and assumptions about why that is. But I tell you what, there's very few people who would be able to remain that committed and that steadfast in light of how much, like you said, he's been going through. At some point, it's like you just think somebody's going to throw up their hands and say, "Oh, enough! I give up. This is not worth it." And so I understand what you're saying completely.
I know you work a lot through local organizations, sometimes Republican groups. How can people partner with Republican Red or work together with you on your project, both the wine and the shades of red?
Yeah. So the silver lining, I guess, in the fact that social media has been such a pain to work with. And when I say social media, I mean Meta and Google and the big ones. The silver lining there is I really had to rethink my marketing plan. How am I going to reach people? Because if they can just decide to turn me off, what's going to stop them from doing the same thing this election, right? I can't rely on them. And, moreover, I don't want to give them my advertising dollars. Sometimes it's sometimes it's a necessary evil, right? Like, you're kind of stuck with what you have, but the silver lining here is I went back to the drawing board and I thought, how else can I get the brand in front of people? Because once they see the brand, they love it. The next question is, well, is it good wine? It's, and then if they can taste the wine, they're hooked because it is excellent wine. I've spent my life in the industry. This is not a gimmick product. It stands up against any other $27 bottle of wine. And so I went back to the drawing board and said, well, how am I going to get this out there? So what I did is I thought, why don't I just contact my local GOP and others in the state, county central committees, because they have the emails and contacts for all the Republicans in the county. And I thought, instead of giving the advertising dollars to Meta, why don't I just give it to them? And I will make a donation to their organization and give them the marketing materials so that they can just let their customers know about Republican Red. And the product is perfect for their people. They're the members of these committees and in Republican organizations obviously love the product. And the organization makes some money in fundraising leading into this incredibly important election. And so it just really made sense. And so I'm across the country in different organizations, and they just send out a code. Like, for instance, Maricopa County down in Phoenix area. All of their members, we have an affiliate link. So anyone that links through that to our website, Maricopa gets 15%. I make a donation to Maricopa for 15% of the sale. And I do this across the country. And, it's a donation. It's not something I can write off, but I already know I'm going to be spending 25% on advertising to acquire customers through other channels. So why not give it to the place where I want the cash to go anyway? And so that works really well. It's a lot of work to get them, each county or state organization in. It's actually fairly easy and quick to get it set up. The hard part is getting in touch with the decision makers and to get them, to get the actual agreement to come on board. But I have, a couple dozen of them at this point. It works really well. So I'm just trying to get the word out there so people know that we're here, and that they can partner with Republican Red to raise funds for whether it's whether it's a county central committee or a state GOP or any other kind of Republican or conservative organization. We can partner. We can create special labels. If it's a large enough organization and we're going to be moving enough product, we can create special labels and, really do a collaboration. We can sell wine for, if you're having big events, right? You're going to be serving wine anyway. Why not put a bottle of Republican Red on there? We'll work a deal with you. So that's how I'm trying to get the wine out there.
It's a great idea. And what you're describing, is just you're changing a little bit of your marketing strategy, your channel, where are you trying to acquire customers? And it's amazing because it serves multiple purposes, right? You have better ownership of how that's going. You're directing your dollars into a place that you feel does more good, that's more efficient, and you're driving value for the end consumer. So in your example, where you're going to these county parties, it's great. They're in their target audience. And for anyone who then wants to purchase, knowing that is going to help something that they believe in. It's a huge motivating factor for consumers. And it really serves to reinforce already your brand messaging and your alignment. So I think it's amazing. And the potential, as you shared, for these labels, I think has tremendous power for you as you go to market and expand beyond where you are right now.
And I think you make an important point about quality, right? It's people might be attracted to you because the brand's Republican Red, but they'll stay your customers. They drink the wine because it's good.
That's right.
That's essential.
No one's going to continue buying wine they don't enjoy drinking.
Right.
So you have to have, there's one thing about differentiation, which is really important when we talk about this for this audience. But yeah, just like in anything, your product or service has to be fantastic. There's no shortcutting there.
Yeah. What I found, so my wife picks up the phone and calls every one of our customers and makes a personal connection and says, thank you for supporting us. And that touch is not out there in the world. So when you're when you're selling something that is based off of your passion and based off of, it's a values driven product, personal connection, and bring it back to, the humanity. Like we're a small company that is growing and trying to make connections, trying to make it in this world. So when you can make a connection, a personal connection with your customer, man, it makes all the difference in the world. They see who you are, and they are so much more willing to buy from you again. Because
exactly,
man, they care, they're accessible, they're real people. And, that's been really successful for getting kind of lifetime value, for getting people to come back and then they go out and tell their friends, man, they actually called, the owner of the company called me.
Right.
And, it says a lot.
Yeah, it does. That personal touch. You're absolutely right. That's another differentiator, right? To your point, no one's calling them from anywhere else. I get very little personal touch from any real vendor anymore because we're also hooked on digital. Maybe I get an email that claims it's from the owner, but to get a personal phone call, that's a big difference maker. And it'll really help you with your partners in these local organizations that are pushing your brand. Mm-hmm. I know this is probably in and of itself a 45-minute answer, but for somebody who might not be a wine expert, tell me what's unique about Republican Red that make it taste so good. What's the cool factor?
Yes, give us a snippet on that.
Yeah, of the quality of the wine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the brand speaks for itself, right? And we've covered that. So like I said, my dad planted the very first vineyards in the San Lucia Highlands. And, why is it that the San Lucia Highlands makes world-class Pinot Noir and something 60 miles, south or inland can't replicate the same quality? And there's a term in the wine world. It's a French term, and it's called terroir. And there's a reason why we've been growing wine grapes in California. I mean, if you can look back to the first vineyards, maybe it's 100 or 200 years, but really the industry's really got going in the 70s. So a vineyard lasts about 30 years. So we're only on our second or third iteration, planting of a particular site. And what that means is we haven't had we're just learning where things grow really well. As an industry, we are maturing and realizing Napa makes great Cabernet. People know that. But they're also learning that Paso Robles also makes great Cabernet. We know that the Monterey County makes outstanding Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And my dad happened to be lucky enough to plant those varieties here. And so we know that this is where great Pinot Noir and Chardonnay come from. And so, growing up in the industry, I know these things. I know where the best quality is. And so that's where I get the grapes. That's where, and it starts with, if you want to make great wine, you have to start and have greatness at every level of the production. You can make horrible wine out of great grapes, but you can't make great wine out of horrible grapes. Or now. So we start with, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir from the San Lucia Highlands, which is here in Monterey County. And further south in Paso, which is only about 60 miles south of here, but it's much warmer and it's a much better climate for Cabernet. So I source our Cabernet from there.
Mm-hmm.
And the wine is fantastic. It's, we've aged them in barrels. We've done all the, without, like you said, without getting too technical and down in the weeds on this, we're professional. I've spent my lifetime in the industry. We know what we're doing. We make excellent wine. And, for those that are still a little nervous about, pick up a bottle. You know what your favorite variety is. Pick up a bottle, try it. And, I promise you'll come back for more. It is outstanding wine.
Yeah, you were showing us earlier about the 45 to 47 bottle. And that seemed really awesome.
See this right here? To celebrate our 45th
bring that in
soon
close.
to be 47th bottle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes. That's a perfect celebration of what's about to happen here.
Yeah, exactly. And we also have for those that like sparkling wine, we have a champagne, or it doesn't come from Champagne in a region in France. So we call it a sparkling wine here in California. But we have a wonderful sparkling wine that's from Napa Valley. And it's got our little logo, our elephant logo on it, but it's got Trump's hair on the on the elephant. And so we have a little celebration of Trump with our celebration sparkling wine. And we're actually in the next week, we're going to have a big announcement. We're creating a limited edition. So I have this wine that's it's aged 10 years, and I have a few cases of it. And what we're doing is we're creating a very, very special label and putting gold foiling on it. It's going to be really beautiful to commemorate really that heroic moment with President Trump. And for those that want to really kind of celebrate that moment and have something to put on display for supporting that man, we're gonna have that out in the next week or so. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that'll be a collector's item, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's really special.
And you are celebrating a special moment there.
Yeah, historic.
Yeah, truly historic. So we're down to as we finish the podcast today, I want to do a couple of quick questions. I thought, let's do 90-second pitch for Republican Red to our audience. Give us your slickest, most exciting pitch for Republican Red.
All right. Well, Republican Red is wine for the right side. It's for proud Republicans who want a bottle that reflects their values. And so you go to republicanred.com. It's only available there. You buy whichever bottles you want. We have our standard bottles, which is kind of our Republican Red that you have right here. And then we also have the kind of special 45, 47 type bottles. We have a Second Amendment celebration bottle. And you can select the wines that you want. We ship it right to your doorstep. So it's a real simple process. You go to republicanred.com, buy the wines. We ship it right to your doorstep. It comes, you have people over, you put it on the table, and people stop in their tracks when they see this bottle of wine. It'll start conversations. It'll get things going for sure. And I like to say the only thing better than the brand is the wine inside of it. I'm a second generation vintner, and the quality of the product is absolutely outstanding. You're supporting, kind of conservative brand. It's a family business. My wife and I run it. And, that's my pitch. I'm not a polished pitch man for sure, but that's what I'm doing.
That's great. And I thought also, we asked this to a lot of our guests, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever you want to do on just some topic, off topic, not Republican Red, not Republican politics, but just something that maybe floating your boat these days.
Something floating my boat these days?
Yeah, maybe a hobby that you're into, a good book you read, maybe some insight you've had, something interesting.
My 16-month-old just he's got the little drunk man walks. He just started walking and he has his hands up in the air and he walks like this. And he just goes, "Daddy, daddy, daddy." He's just such a special little boy, and he just fills my heart with love. It's unbelievable. So anything outside of work and all this that I'm doing is just centered around spending time with, I'm a family man, and it's my wife and children. It's my parents. It's my in-laws. That's life for me. That's why we do this all. And, so that's what really floats my boat, and outside of that, getting out for a round of golf or, it's been years since I've been able to hit the slopes skiing, but, those are things that I really love doing.
That's a great way to think about life, particularly as we end this discussion. There's business, there's making money, there's supporting and trying to change the world with supporting impactful organizations like you're doing. But then there's the stuff that really matters, our family. And that's a great reminder as we come to a close. So Paul, it's been great having you on. Been
Thank
wonderful.
You. Appreciate it.
And we really appreciate you taking the time for sure. And I'm excited to try out the wine.
Good. Very good. Thank you so much. This has been my first podcast. I love talking about what I do. I'm passionate about it, as you can see. So I really appreciate you having me on your show and talking about Republican Red Winery. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining. And I think there's a lot that people can take away and some ideas about how they can further their business, how they can think about marketing differently, think about establishing, again, affiliate relationships, all those things you share, I think can help a lot of people. So thanks for being so open about that and what you've learned on your business journey so others can benefit from your experience. And for those tuning in, we appreciate you as well. We invite you to join the Liberty Partnership community at libertyspenders.com. There you can learn more about how we can help you engage with this audience. And you can also engage with a special AI version of Kurt and Kristen through our Liberty Access Multiplier AI tool. So I appreciate that. Check out libertyspenders.com for more. And as always, we'll see you next time.